Guy Paget and Sir Richard Jeffcote first met at Oxford in the 20s. They became close friends. It was a friendship that was to last over 45 years. They both served in the army together, and after the war they both went into politics, naturally in the same party. Guy Paget died last year, and the loss affected Sir Richard deeply. Recently he was approached by Nigel Beaumont, who claimed he was writing a book featuring the friendship of these two men. However, Sir Richard, now a famous politician, was horrified to learn that Beaumont intended putting an entirely different interpretation on this friendship. He claims that Beaumont threatened to publish the book unless he received the sum of £10,000. This demand was later increased to £15,000. It was at this stage that the police were called in. Today, Nigel Beaumont stands trial for blackmail. At the moment, Inspector Woods, a witness for the prosecution, is being cross-examined.
Inspector Woods, I'd like to know exactly what Sir Richard said when he got in touch with the police on April the 5th.
He didn't get in touch with us, ma'am.
Then why did you become involved at all?
Well, I was instructed to call on Sir Richard. I went to Fulbury Manor on the night of April the 5th.
And was Sir Richard expecting you?
Oh, no. I'd been instructed to call by the Chief Constable. Sir Richard had been dining with him earlier that evening. When we arrived, the house was in darkness. I later learned there were no servants in the house. Sir Richard took a considerable time in answering the door, so long, in fact, that I was on the point of forcing an entry when he finally arrived and opened up. As soon as he did, my sergeant and I immediately smelled gas. On investigation, we found that the doors and the windows of Sir Richard's study had been blocked and the room was full of gas.
And what did Sir Richard tell you?
Well, at first, Sir Richard was reluctant to say anything at all. He just kept on saying, "There's no point, it's all over." He was very agitated and strung up. But later, once he'd calmed down, he laid evidence which led to the arrest of the accused.
And that was?
That on March the 25th, he was called on by a Nigel Beaumont, the accused. The outcome of that meeting being that Beaumont threatened to publish defamatory material and photographs concerning Sir Richard and the late Guy Paget, unless he was paid the sum of £10,000. Sir Richard paid over the money. I saw his bank statement confirming that fact and later obtained the cheque itself.
Now, what happened after Sir Richard had shown you the bank statements?
He told me that Beaumont had called on him earlier again that day on the morning of the 5th and asked for a further £5,000. He then told me the accused was staying at the Bell Hotel in Fulchester.
And you went there the same night?
Yes, I did.
Inspector Woods, when you arrived at Fulbury Manor and found the room full of gas, what did you do?
Well, I opened all the doors and windows and then made sure that Sir Richard was all right.
And was he?
Yes, he was.
Did you inquire why the study was full of gas? Did you ask for an explanation?
Well, it was obvious why, ma'am, but in view of his overwrought condition, I thought it best to carry on the inquiry for the time being, just to keep his mind on something else, as it were. And while I was doing this, my sergeant phoned the Chief Constable and explained matters. He came straight over. Of course, if he hadn't, naturally I would have tackled the matter of the gas with Sir Richard, but as it was, I left it to the Chief Constable.
You felt it best that any advice or admonition should come from a friend rather than a stranger?
Precisely, my lord.
Still, I suppose you arrived at some conclusion yourself as to that gas-filled room.
Yes, I did, my lord. Blackmail is a nasty, underhand business. It can drive a man to doing all sorts of things. I'm only glad we arrived when we did.
Never.
Inspector Woods, when you were told to call on Sir Richard, were you aware that something was wrong?
Yes.
And that was the reason why you considered forcing an entry when there was a delay in the door being opened?
Yes, I suppose it was.
A fear that you might have arrived too late to prevent a tragedy?
Well, yes.
So the smell of gas was not entirely unexpected?
I wouldn't say that. It still came as a shock.
Well, would half anticipation more accurately describe your reaction?
Yes, I suppose it would.
Do you think this half anticipation could in any way have coloured your interpretation of the facts?
I don't understand what you're suggesting, ma'am. Facts are facts, plain and simple.
Quite. But it's the interpretation of them that varies, don't you think, Inspector? Now, when Sir Richard finally opened the door, was he suffering from any effects of the gas?
No, but then there wasn't that amount of gas.
Oh. So you're saying now that the room wasn't full of gas?
Well, not exactly full, no.
Well, you really must get your evidence accurate, Inspector. It would save the court a lot of time.
I'm sorry, ma'am, but at the time we didn't stop to consider that we should measure the amount of therms.
And you found something else in the room.
Something else, ma'am? I'm sorry.
Wasn't there a dog lying dead in front of the gas fire?
Oh, yes, the dog, yes, there was, but that has nothing to do with this case.
Hasn't it? Do you happen to know who the dog belongs to?
Sir Richard?
And prior to that, to his close friend, Guy Paget, with whom he shared the house.
Inspector, did you ask Sir Richard about the dog?
No, I didn't, my lord. I left that to the Chief Constable, as I said.
Miss Tate, are these questions concerning the dog relevant to this case?
Your lordship elicited the suggestion that Sir Richard was so upset about something that he attempted to commit suicide. I am endeavouring to correct that impression.
Very well. Go on, please.
My lord. Inspector, now the day you called on Fulchester Manor, was that April the 5th?
Yes, it was.
Were you aware that April the 5th was the anniversary of the death of his close friend, Guy Paget?
No, ma'am.
Were you aware that earlier that day Sir Richard had visited the grave of his close friend and taken the dog with him?
No.
If you had known this, together with the fact that for a whole year this dog had been pining for its dead master, well, do you think this would have altered your interpretation of the facts?
Miss Tate, I suppose you are suggesting that Sir Richard Jeffcott might have put the dog to sleep himself. Well, this witness knows nothing about that, and it is inadmissible for you to ask the inspector what his impression was as to the reason why that room was full of gas.
My lord, firstly, the room was not full of gas, and secondly, it was your lordship who asked the inspector what conclusions he jumped to. And he said that he assumed Sir Richard had attempted to commit suicide. I am suggesting that the assumption was wrong.
Very well. I was wrong to ask the inspector about his assumptions, but do you think now that we could close this topic, Miss Tate?
Very well, my lord. Now, you've told us, Inspector, that after leaving Sir Richard, you went to the Bell Hotel to see the accused.
Yes, I did.
Did Mr. Beaumont seem outraged or surprised at your visit at this late hour?
Well, neither. I'd said his attitude was quietly resigned, as I already said. His actual words were, "Oh dear, I've been half expecting you to turn up. I suppose that stupid old poof has accused me of blackmail or something."
I see. And when you questioned him, he said that he'd called on Sir Richard and received a cheque for £10,000.
Yes.
And when you searched his room, you found Exhibit 1, which you describe as a mock-up of a book, brief notes on the intended contents of each chapter and accompanying photographs.
Yes.
And you saw that the opening 3 chapters of this book were devoted to the lives of Sir Richard and Guy Paget.
Yes, there are also 3 other chapters concerning a Miss Stella Pickford and the late J.B. Garford, the millionaire.
And did you yourself call on Miss Pickford?
Yes, I did. I called on Miss Pickford to inquire if she too had been approached by the accused.
And what did she tell you?
She told me that she had been approached on March the 26th, the day after Beaumont had initially called on Sir Richard. After receiving a promise that the book would not be published, Miss Pickford paid over the sum in cheque form of £10,000, but she took the precaution of post-dating the cheque.
Did she say why?
Yes, she did. She said that she wasn't going to be rushed into anything when she didn't wish to antagonize Beaumont.
Inspector Woods, when you searched Nigel Beaumont's possessions, did you find amongst them 2 cheques?
Yes, I did. One was from Miss Pickford, made out to the accused.
And that hadn't yet been cashed. And am I not correct in saying that the other cheque was made out to Sir Richard for the sum of £10,000?
Yes.
And this cheque was signed by Mr. Beaumont and dated the 4th of April?
Yes, it was.
Will you look at this cheque, Inspector, please? Exhibit 3, my lord. Is this the one you found in Mr. Beaumont's room, the one signed by him?
Yes.
Did you question him about it?
Yes, I did. He said he'd offered it to Sir Richard, but he'd refused to accept it.
So you found 1 cheque that hadn't been cashed and another cheque refunding Sir Richard's money. Well, it's hardly the actions of a blackmailer. Did he explain why he'd offered to pay back the money?
He said that his publisher had advised him to go ahead and publish, but Sir Richard had begged him not to and had increased his offer to £15,000.
Nevertheless, Sir Richard did give Mr. Beaumont a cheque for £10,000, and Mr. Beaumont did give you an explanation as to why he was paid the money, namely, that it was offered as compensation in lieu of expected royalties.
That's what he said, yes.
And it was an explanation that you chose to ignore. Were there any other people mentioned in this book?
Yes, there were 4 more.
And have the police contacted these 4 people?
2 of them are dead, ma'am.
Well, I imagine they still have relatives. Have they been contacted?
No, ma'am.
And the other 2?
No.
So, out of 6 people mentioned in a book, the police have only bothered to contact 2 of them. Is this because they live in the Fulchester area?
Partly, but also because we have sufficient evidence from Sir Richard and Miss Pickford on their own.
So, in fact, you don't know whether Mr. Beaumont has received permission on behalf of the other people or not?
No, ma'am.
Thank you, Inspector.
Inspector, when you first saw Nigel Beaumont, he told you he half expected a visit from the police.
Yes, sir.
I see. Now, this cheque he showed you, is there any way of telling when he wrote it?
No, sir.
So he could have written it at any time.
Yes, sir.
Did you ask him whether he had any written agreement as evidence of this bargain he says he made with Sir Richard?
Yes, I did, sir. He told me there wasn't one.
A bargain involving £10,000 and an undertaking by Mr. Beaumont not to publish, but no writing is evidence of it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Inspector. You are Sir Richard Jeffcott, MP of Fulbury Manor, Fulchester, and of 95 Queen Anne's Gate, London, West 4.
I am.
Do you recognise the accused?
Yes, he's Nigel Beaumont.
When did you first meet him?
On March the 25th this year. He'd telephoned me the previous day to ask for an appointment. He told me he was writing a book about some of the long-lasting friendships of well-known people. He proposed to devote several chapters to Guy Paget and myself. He asked if he might call and go through the material with me to see if I had any objections or could make any suggestions. On the telephone, he sounded a perfectly personable young man, and, well, I suppose in a way I was flattered that someone should consider the lives of Guy and myself worth writing about, so I agreed.
And what took place at that interview, Sir Richard?
Quite frankly, Mr. Lotterby, it's a day I only wish I could forget. However, it all started innocently enough. When Beaumont arrived, he asked if he could see over the house. As a matter of courtesy, I showed him round. He had a camera, asked if he could take one or two photographs. I agreed to this. He took several of my room and of the bedroom where Guy slept when he stayed at the manor. It was only later that I was to learn the meaning of these photographs.
And what was that?
Well, the rooms happened to be adjoining. Mr. Beaumont put his own interpretation on their close geography.
What did he actually say?
Well, nothing immediately. It all happened rather gradually. I suppose he must have thought me dreadfully naive not to have cottoned onto his game at once. After we'd been round the place, we went downstairs to my study. He brought out some old photographs of Guy and myself and asked if I could suggest captions for them. He let me go on for quite a while. Then he said he had some much better captions.
I know you must be finding all this extremely distasteful, Sir Richard, but can you remember exactly what was said? Can you give us an example?
Yes, I can. There was one photograph in particular. It had been taken of Guy and me at the Café Royal in 1945.
My lord, this photograph is to be found in Exhibit 1. The relevant page is marked, if the jury...
Yes, of course. Bailiff? Carry on, Mr. Lotterby.
Thank you, my lord. Sir Richard, as the members of the jury look at this photograph, I'd like you to tell us exactly what was taking place when it was, when the photo was taken.
Certainly. That was taken just after the general election of 1945. It was the first time either of us had stood for Parliament, and we'd both scraped in by the skin of our teeth. When we met, I naturally slapped him on the back, gave him a dig in the ribs, and probably called him a lucky dog or something like that.
And how did Mr. Beaumont construe the action in this photograph?
He intended giving it the caption, "Journeys end in lovers' meeting."
I see. And what was your reaction when he said this?
Well, I must admit that at first I didn't take him seriously. I thought perhaps he just had an odd sense of humor. But when he continued to make obscene comments on the other photographs, well, then I realized he was serious. I was absolutely appalled. I just stood and stared as he made a fine friendship sound, well, filthy, dirty.
Sir Richard, I'm sorry to ask this, but could you be more explicit?
He was suggesting that there was a homosexual relationship between Guy and myself.
I see, thank you.
Nothing could have been further from the truth.
Sir Richard, what happened once you realized all this?
Well, my first reaction was to take him by the scruff of the neck and throw him out, but he insisted on my listening to what he had to say. He told me that he already had a publisher, that the book would appear later this year. Whatever I did or said, I couldn't prevent this happening.
And what was to be the title of this book?
Oh, typical gutter press stuff. Just Good Friends with a question mark after it. I told him if it did appear, I'd sue for libel. He just laughed at me and told me I ought to think about my career and the effect a scandal like this would have on my party. Unfortunately, he was right. I've seen this happen to too many public men. Whenever this sort of thing happens, mud sticks, and he knew it.
Did he suggest that there might be some alternative course?
Oh, yes. Yes, he certainly did. The suggestion was that if he didn't publish his book, he'd lose a great deal in royalties. However, if I was to pay him £10,000, he'd forget all about publication.
And so you paid him the money?
After a great deal of argument, yes. I tried to get a written agreement out of him, but he told me I just have to trust him. My lord, I'd like to make one thing absolutely clear. I paid over this money not because I had anything to hide, but because I wasn't prepared to see the name of a fine man, a man who'd served his country well, smeared in any way. I just wanted that to go on record.
I quite understand.
Thank you, my lord.
Can the witness see Exhibit 2, please? Is that the cheque you gave to Mr. Beaumont?
Yes.
When Mr. Beaumont left, did you feel that that was the end of the matter?
Yes, I was stupid enough to believe him.
And when did you next see him?
On the morning of April the 5th, he called round unexpectedly. He said he'd been thinking matters over and he wanted another £5,000. This completely shook me. Perhaps for the first time, I fully realized that I was in the grip of a blackmailer. I didn't know what to say or do. He told me he'd give me time to think about it, and he left. The remainder of that day is almost a complete blank. I remember going for a walk. I vaguely remember dining with Colonel Roberts. I suppose I must have said something to him that resulted in the police calling on me. That day was probably the blackest of my life.
Thank you, Sir Richard.
How old are you, Sir Richard?
65.
And you've been a member of Parliament for 25 years?
28 years, actually.
A long time. You're obviously a man of great experience, a man of the world, so to say.
You could say that.
Now, this story, your story and that of Mr. Beaumont, vary considerably.
I'm sure they do.
But if what you say is true, that Mr. Beaumont threatened to publish his book unless you paid him a large sum of money, then why didn't you being an experienced man of the world, a man of great privilege, why did you not go straight to the police, to the chief constable, your close friend?
I thought I'd already given my reasons in detail, Miss Tate.
Oh, you did, and they sounded most noble. But then if you had something to hide, that would be a reason for not going to the police.
Yes, but that wasn't the case. I knew full well that if I brought this man to court, he'd do his utmost to smear my character. He traded on that knowledge. However guiltless a man may be, there are always those prepared to believe the worst of it.
Well, you haven't always felt this, have you, Sir Richard?
I don't think I follow.
In 1967, a magazine planned to publish an article about Guy Paget and yourself, and amid a blaze of publicity, you threatened to sue for libel, and the article was consequently dropped. Now, is that not correct?
Yes, but the circumstances were entirely different.
Well, were you aware that Nigel Beaumont did most of the research for that article?
He did mention it.
Mr. Beaumont did tell you the name of his publisher, did he not?
Yes, he did mumble some name at me.
Oh, come, Sir Richard, he showed you a contract he had from them. At least that's what you told the police.
Yes, now I come to think of it, he did show me something.
Well, if you believe this book to be as salacious as you say, why did you not simply get your solicitor to write to the publisher, as you did in 1967 regarding the magazine article?
Because by then I'd already paid him his money. I thought the whole thing was over and done with. I just wanted to forget the whole sordid incident.
Well, do you often part so readily with £10,000?
Of course not. He demanded his money there and then. I was given no chance to think about the matter.
Oh, really, Sir Richard? You know as well as I do that a book is not published overnight. And this one wasn't even written. You had plenty of time to take legal steps to suppress this book, had you wanted to, had you been able to. I put it to you that at no time had this young man ever demanded money from you. More the reverse. You knew that if you brought an action for libel, the action would fail because the contents of the book were true. And so you tried to buy him off with £10,000 to compensate for his loss of royalties.
No, that is an absolute lie.
Is it? My lord, may the witness and the members of the jury see Exhibit 3. Have you ever seen this cheque before, Sir Richard?
No, never.
A cheque made out from Mr. Beaumont to yourself for £10,000. Now, why should he want to pay back this money?
I don't think he did want to. That cheque was never offered to me. It was simply a clever ruse to protect himself in case he got caught.
Or was it that he offered to pay you back the money because he wanted to publish his book, and you offered him a further £5,000? I suggest that that is the true version of the story.
You can suggest what you like, but the fact remains that that man is a blackmailer.
That is something for the court to decide, Sir Richard.
Quite so, Your Lordship. I apologise.
Sir Richard, would I be correct in saying that Guy Paget and yourself lived together?
Oh, really, my lord? I must protest.
Miss Tate, did you mean what you said just then?
Yes, my lord. I understand that Mr. Paget and Sir Richard shared a house together.
Then that is what you should have said. Your choice of phrase is rather unfortunate. The words living together have a well-established innuendo. I think it would be better if you rephrased that question, Miss Tate.
Very well, my lord. Sir Richard, did you and Mr. Paget share a house together?
Yes, we did. It had been left to him some years ago. As it was quite close to the House of Commons, and as at that time I was living in Kensington, which, as you know, is some way away, he suggested that we shared the place. It was simply a matter of convenience.
I see. And you also shared Fulbury Manor?
Yes, his constituency was not far from here. It was simply a reciprocal arrangement.
Then you must have spent a great deal of time together.
Yes.
In fact, most of the time.
My lord, I really cannot see the relevance of these questions.
I can, Mr. Lotterby. Miss Tate is pursuing her suggestion that the witness volunteered the money because he feared that the libel action might fail.
Respect, my lord, it is still blackmail for a person to ask for money to withhold publication of material that is not libelous. Therefore, the question of whether the information is true or not has no bearing on the case.
It has a bearing on the case, Mr. Lotterby, in that it provides the motivation for the defence's suggestion that Mr. Beaumont did not demand the money, but that it was offered to him. Now, I have no wish to pry unnecessarily into the private lives of public figures, but I think I must let Miss Tate continue.
As you wish, my lord.
I'm obliged, my lord. Neither of you ever married, Sir Richard?
No.
Were you ever engaged?
No.
Was this because you disliked women?
Certainly not. We both had a number of women friends. But from a purely selfish point of view, marriage can often interfere with a man's career. It's bound to make certain demands.
Unlike the friendship of another man?
On the whole, I think the friendship between two men is less demanding, less emotional, yes.
Yet you would, of course, deny that there was anything physical in your relationship with Guy Paget.
I most certainly would.
And yet in every photograph in Mr. Beaumont's book, you seem to be in some sort of physical contact. You know, arms round each other, hands touching, that sort of thing.
Well, footballers spend half their lives embracing one another, madam, but nobody goes about suggesting they're in love.
Did you and Mr. Paget go on holiday together?
On occasions.
You each had a car. Did you insure them for one another to drive?
Yes, because...
Did you have a joint account at a well-known London store?
Yes, that was almost entirely for food.
Oh, so you shared the housekeeping costs?
Well, there seemed little point in...
I see. So you worked together, you went on holiday together, you lived in the same house, you ate together, you shared cars, you had a joint account. Do you know, one could almost be describing a married couple, don't you think, Sir Richard?
No, I don't. I'm sure that this often happens. But I don't think the friendship between two men is the sort of thing that you would understand, madam. Guy and I, there was a bond between us. We were more than brothers. I could talk for 1,000,000 years. You'd never understand how it really was. The depth between us. But he's gone, and I miss him.
The case of the Queen against Beaumont will be resumed tomorrow in the Crown Court. Nigel Beaumont, a writer, stands accused of blackmail. He intended publishing a book exposing the private lives of Miss Stella Pickford and Sir Richard Jeffcott, MP. Beaumont claims that he was voluntarily offered money not to publish. Sir Richard Jeffcott denies this. In evidence yesterday, he stated that Beaumont threatened to publish the story that Sir Richard and another member of Parliament, the late Guy Paget, had a homosexual relationship, the price of his silence being £10,000, and that later Beaumont demanded a further £5,000. In the box now is Miss Stella Pickford, the millionairess. She, too, claims to have been blackmailed by Beaumont.
Why did you agree to see Mr. Beaumont in the first place, Miss Pickford?
He said he was writing a book about J.B. Garford, my late employer. As I was his personal secretary, he asked if he might come along and discuss 1 or 2 points with me, and I agreed.
This was on the morning of March the 26th of this year.
Yes, at 11 o'clock.
And what happened at that interview?
He began by discussing the life and career of Mr. Garford.
By he, you're referring to the accused, Nigel Beaumont.
Naturally. From what he said, it was obvious that he'd done a great deal of research. It so happens that I act as trustee on a number of charitable trusts that are in Mr. Garford's name. For several years, I'd been interested in having an official biography written about him. And as Mr. Beaumont seemed to know so much about the background, I asked him if he'd consider the proposition.
What was his reaction?
He simply laughed in my face. He said I wouldn't approve one bit of the sort of book he was going to write. I asked him what on earth he meant, and it was then he told me what this book was really to be about. He intended to misconstrue the relationship between my employer and myself.
I think it would be helpful at this stage, Miss Pickford, if you would tell the court what your relationship was with Mr. Garford.
Very well. I went to work for Mr. Garford in 1934. I began as one of his secretaries, and later I became his personal secretary. And in that capacity, I travelled with him all over the world. But when he was in England, because he did a great deal of his work from his home, I, in company with the rest of the staff, lived in. It was purely a business arrangement and continued after his marriage. In 1945, Mrs. Garford died. J.B. then withdrew a great deal from public life, but it was always his wish to do something to help the young. And so I devised and worked out several charitable trusts for this purpose. But before they could be set up, he died. I've always thought that he made me his beneficiary so that I could carry on with this work. And this I have done in his name.
Yes. But I'm sure the court has heard of the many Garford trusts and charities. They're a fine memorial.
Yes, a fine memorial to a fine man. J.B. had built up a business empire. His name was known throughout the world, known and respected. This is something I have worked to preserve, and this is what he intended to destroy.
How?
By suggesting that I was J.B. Garford's mistress, and had been since 1934. I'm going to expose him for the hypocrite that he was, and you for the whore that you are. Those were his very words. His mind is diseased, obscene.
Usher, a glass of water.
Thank you.
Would you like a chair, Miss Pickford?
No, thank you. I apologize for getting so emotional.
Very well, Mr. Lotterby. Carry on.
I'm much obliged, my lord. Miss Pickford, did the accused say how he proposed substantiating these wild accusations?
Well, of course, he couldn't substantiate them. There was never anything between Mr. Garford and me. But he had been clever, really diabolically clever. He'd managed to collect some old press photographs and some personal photographs, how I don't know. And most of these he had doctored in some way.
How do you mean doctored?
He'd cut out certain people. In several of them, it looked as if Mr. Garford and I were alone, whereas, in fact, there were a number of other people present.
My lord, I've had copies of the photographs in Exhibit 1 taken. If the witness and members of the jury could see them.
Yes, yes, of course. Bailey? Do you have them, Miss Tate?
Yes, my lord.
Now, the first photograph, entitled Honeymoon Love Nest for Three. The title would seem to suggest that the three of you went on honeymoon together. Would that be correct?
Certainly not. I was there together with the cook, the butler, the chauffeur, and Mrs. Garford's maid. But of course, They've been cut out of the picture.
I see. Honeymoon love nest for 7 doesn't sound quite so sensational, does it?
No.
And the next photograph bears the caption, "An intimate dinner for 2."
This was taken at Kettner's in 1943. On the other side of Mr. Garford was Mrs. Garford, and sitting next to me was Mrs. Garford's brother. But they too, like in the other photograph, have been cut out.
Yes. Well, I don't think we need go on any further with these. Did Mr. Beaumont make any other allegations?
Oh, plenty. His twisted mind had been working overtime. He not only accused me of being J.B. Garford's mistress, he also said that I'd had a hand in Mrs. Garford's death.
What?
Yes. So you can see the kind of man I found I was up against.
Yes. Do you think he really believed these things?
No, of course not. It was merely a means of applying pressure. The blacker the story, the more money he hoped to extort.
And how much money did he demand?
£10,000.
And was this demand accompanied by threats?
Yes, to publish this book.
And so you paid him?
No.
Now, perhaps you could explain, Miss Pickford.
Certainly. I wasn't going to pay money to this blackmailer. So, to get rid of him, to make him feel he'd succeeded, I made out a post-dated cheque. And then, when he'd gone, I rang up my bank and cancelled it. So all he was going round with was a perfectly worthless piece of paper. Oh, I knew he'd be back. But by then, I should have been waiting for him with the police.
Thank you, Miss Pickford.
Miss Pickford, would you describe your status as that of a millionaireess?
Yes.
A multimillionaireess?
Yes.
That's quite an achievement for a personal secretary, wouldn't you say?
As you said, it's merely a status. I was purely the instrument in furthering Mr. Garford's charitable works.
The fringe benefits included homes in the south of France, Rome, Switzerland, Bermuda, Long Island, and 2 in this country. I'm sure you must be an inspiration to all personal secretaries, Miss Pickford. Now, you did say that your relationship with J.B. Garford was purely a business one.
I did.
Yes, that's what I thought you said. And yet in 1937, there was an announcement of your engagement to J.B. Garford. Now, was this also a business arrangement?
No. What I meant was, well, I think that most secretaries at some time or other imagine they're in love with their boss. It's only a temporary situation, and as soon as I found out it was only a passing infatuation, the engagement was broken off.
Was J.B. Garford a handsome man?
Very.
Attractive to women?
Certainly.
And 2 months later, after the engagement was called off, he married an American millionairess.
Yes.
And you still went on working for them?
Yes.
Did you not feel any jealousy towards this woman who'd married your boss?
Of course not.
I imagine she must have been very beautiful.
As a matter of fact, she was exceedingly plain.
Then perhaps her money made her more attractive in Mr. Garford's eyes. I understand they slept in different rooms.
People often did then.
And as someone who slept in the same house, I believe Mr. Beaumont asked you to confirm this.
He did. And suggested that Mr. Garford spent every night in my bed.
Yes, well, we'll come to that later, Miss Pickford. Now, my learned friend has shown you photographs from Mr. Beaumont's books, and you say that these have been doctored.
They had.
By Mr. Beaumont?
Obviously.
My lord, might the witness and the members of the jury see the originals of these photographs? They can easily be detached.
Would it not be simpler to pass the book itself, Miss Tate?
No, my lord. It's the back of the photographs that I want everyone to see. They're only attached by photo mounts, and the page is marked.
Very well.
Thank you.
Miss Pickford, can you see the backs of these 2 photographs quite clearly?
Yes.
Then you will see that each one bears the rubber stamp of the photo library of a national newspaper. They are as Mr. Beaumont received them. Yet you claimed he doctored them by cutting certain people out.
Well, in that case, they must have been done by the newspapers concerned at the time.
But not by Mr. Beaumont. He was not even born at the time. Do keep them for a moment, please, Miss Pickford. I'd like you to read the captions on the back of each photograph.
Honeymoon love nest for 3. An intimate dinner for 2.
So they were not Mr. Beaumont's captions after all. He was merely stating something that had already been published. Well, wasn't he?
I wasn't to know that, was I?
Unless you'd seen them for yourself.
I had not.
Miss Pickford, you told my learned friend, and I quote, "He even accused me of having had a hand in Mrs. Garford's death."
That's right.
And you
He
say
did.
that this was a product of Mr. Beaumont's twisted imagination. But surely he was only repeating an accusation that had been made by someone else.
No, he accused me directly.
Well, am I not right in saying that in 1946, Mrs. Garford's brother, during a civil action contesting his late sister's will, made the self-same accusations?
Oh, that. Well, he soon apologized.
Indeed, he did. And now I put it to you again, Miss Pickford, that Mr. Beaumont did not make the accusations himself, but was merely reminding you of this incident.
No.
When did you actually put a stop on the check?
Just after he'd gone.
10 minutes? 15 minutes?
About that?
Then why on earth did you bother to post-date it?
I didn't want to act on the spur of the moment. I wanted to give myself time to think. But when he'd gone, I thought it best to cancel the cheque straight away.
You sure you didn't post-date it for Mr. Beaumont's benefit, it being so near the new tax year?
For his benefit? Certainly not.
When Mr. Beaumont telephoned and asked to see you for a second time, had you any idea why he wanted to call on you?
It was quite obvious. He wanted more money.
And you immediately contacted the police?
I didn't have to. They called on me.
But not until several days after the phone call, Miss Pickford. I suggest it was never your intention to call the police.
I beg your pardon, Miss Tate, but it was.
Then why did you not do so straight away? Was it because you had nothing to complain about? Or was it because Nigel Beaumont had never made a demand for money?
You're surely not suggesting that I made out a cheque to him for £10,000 of my own free will?
To let sleeping dogs lie? It could be quite a low price for a multimillionairess.
My dear young woman, I have been in business quite long enough to recognize his sort. This isn't the first time I've been blackmailed, you know.
That concludes the case for the prosecution, my lord.
Very well, Miss Tate, when you're ready.
Thank you, my lord. For my first witness, I call Andrew Parry.
Andrew Parry, please. Come this way, sir, please.
What is your religion?
Oh, Church of England.
Take the book in your right hand and read aloud the words on the card.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You are Andrew Parry, the managing director of Prime Publications, and you live at Flat 4, Archymews, London.
That's right.
How long have you been a publisher, Mr. Parry?
For more years than I care to remember. About 25, actually.
So you must have had a great deal of experience.
In publishing, yes, but when this sort of thing happens, one realizes how pitifully little one knows about people.
How do you mean, Mr. Parry?
Well, I mean, take this dear boy here. If I hadn't persuaded him to visit Miss Pickford and Sir Richard, he wouldn't be standing where he is now. If I'd known they were going to make these dreadful allegations against him, well, I wouldn't have let him near them. It wasn't necessary. I just thought it polite they should know about the book. I mean, we didn't want them throwing injunctions all over the place, did we, at the last minute? But nothing. No word of complaint from them. No irate telephone calls, solicitors' letters, nothing, just this. It appalls me how devious some people can be.
Are you saying, Mr. Parry, then, that Mr. Beaumont visited Miss Pickford and Sir Richard on your behalf?
Well, not exactly. My advice, certainly.
Mr. Parry, I think it would help the court if you were to explain to them how you come to meet Mr. Beaumont and what happened from then onwards.
Oh, yes, of course. I'm afraid I've been rather racing ahead. Well, I've known Nigel now casually for about 3 years, I suppose, the odd word at a party, that sort of thing. And 3 months ago, he called at my office and said that he was preparing a book he thought I might be interested in. Well, when he told me the idea, I was completely sold on it. I realized straight away we had a potential bestseller in our grasp.
Were you worried about the possibility of libel?
Well, yes, of course. One always is in publishing. I told him to go through his source material with a fine-tooth comb to check and double-check.
Mr. Parry, I'd like you to look at this book, please. Have you ever seen it before?
Oh, yes, of course.
And it was on this format that Nigel Beaumont was to write his book.
Was. I sincerely trust he still is.
Quite. So that manuscript was to be the basis of Mr. Beaumont's book, and he'd signed a contract for it to be published.
Yes.
It wasn't just pie in the sky.
By no means. Take my word for it, Miss Tate. This book will be a bestseller.
And as a publisher of many years' experience, that's your considered opinion.
Yes. Mark you. The idea won't appeal to everybody.
No. Now, you said that Mr. Beaumont called on Sir Richard and Miss Pickford on your advice.
Yes, to feel out the lie of the land, see if they were going to make a fuss, that sort of thing.
And did you go with him?
No, far too busy. It's a pity I didn't, though. I feel he was too soft-hearted with them. They obviously took advantage of him.
How do you mean?
Well, when he came back from London, I didn't see him for a few days. So he was deliberately trying to avoid me, trying not to tell me that there was going to be no book. Well, he was full of apologies, of course, and told me how they'd told him that their lives would be ruined if he published the book, and how later on that they'd offered him money not to write it. Well, he felt sorry for them, accepted the money, and, well, I suppose it was sort of compensation.
He told you all this at the time?
Yes. He even wanted me to take part of it to defray my expenses. I called him all the fools under the sun.
Why?
Well, quite frankly, I feel he'd been soft-soaped. I told him so.
And did he agree?
No, we had quite an argument about it. But when I pointed out that his royalties would come to at least double the sum that he would receive from them.
Really? As much as that?
Oh, yes. With money from television, magazine interviews, that sort of thing. And plus, the most important thing of all, the public keen for a second book.
And what was his reaction?
Well, he realized how foolish he'd been to accept their offer, and there was nothing in writing, so I told him to hand the money back and say the deal was off. I was there when he wrote the cheque to Sir Richard.
And can you remember what day that was?
4th of April.
So on the day before Nigel Beaumont returned to Fulchester, he made out a cheque to Sir Richard Jeffcott in your presence.
Yes, he did.
Thank you, Mr. Parry.
From what you've said, Mr. Parry, I imagine all this has come as a bit of a shock to you.
Yes, of course.
Why?
Well, I should have thought that had been obvious. One moment I'm in the middle of preparing a book for publication, the next minute I'm involved in a trial for blackmail.
Had you never considered the possibility of this happening?
Well, no. I know Nigel far too well to think he could do a thing like that.
But I thought you'd only met him properly 3 months ago.
Yes, but when you work with someone, you get to know them, don't you?
I'm asking you, Mr. Parry, and it seems you're prepared to believe a man implicitly after only knowing him for 3 months. Didn't it ever occur to you that Mr. Beaumont might not be telling the truth?
No.
I see. Now, you say you told Mr. Beaumont to go through his source material with a fine-tooth comb.
Yeah.
Did you check it yourself?
Well, no, I left him to do that.
My words, you really are a trusting soul, aren't you, Mr. Parry? As the publisher, you could have been involved in libel cases that could have cost you a fortune, perhaps even lost you your business. Yet you place your entire future in the hands of a man you've only known for 3 months. Well, I find that very hard to believe. Unless, of course, you never intended to publish that book at all.
What are you talking about? Of course we're going to publish. I've got a contract with Beaumont. I can produce it if you like. And as for the other matter, well, all books are read for libel after they're finished and before they're printed.
What rights did you acquire in this contract, Mr. Parry?
All rights.
All? What, you mean the hardback rights for Britain, America, Commonwealth, plus the paperback rights?
Yes.
My, you did do well, didn't you? And in percentage terms, what precise royalty was Mr. Beaumont to receive?
My lord, I really cannot see that going into the details of this contract can be of any value whatsoever.
Well, then perhaps Mr. Lutterby can enlighten us.
I shall try, my lord. I submit that only by knowing Mr. Beaumont's anticipated income can the court properly assess whether or not it was more worthwhile for him to blackmail the people he was going to write about.
Yes, of course, Mr. Lutterby, a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush, but I take your point. You can continue.
Thank you, my lord. Now then, Mr. Parry, you were about to tell us what Mr. Beaumont's royalty of the book was to be.
Since you must know, 7.5%.
7.5%, no more than that.
Well, it was his first book.
Ah, and for how much would you have sold this book? £1, 150?
150?
How many copies would you have had printed?
60,000?
Sounds an awful lot, but I'll take your word for it.
Well, that's in this country alone. It'd be more than double that in America.
Oh, I see, the American edition. So, printing altogether 3 times 60,000, well, that's 180,000. That would bring in, providing every copy sold, £270,000. And Mr. Beaumont would receive, yes, well, he'd receive about £20,250. My arithmetic is more or less correct, isn't it, Mr. Parry?
Well, I'll take your word for it.
But you told my learned friend that Mr. Beaumont could expect royalties of at least £40,000.
Well, yes, he could in the end with the second edition and paperbacks.
Oh, by the way, had you actually signed a contract with this American publisher?
Well, not exactly. We'd come to an agreement.
But had you signed a contract?
Well, the book wasn't written yet. We had an agreement in principle.
That might or might not have materialized. Did this also apply to the British distribution?
Well, naturally, if the book isn't written.
So what you are saying is not that Mr. Beaumont would have received £20,250 in royalties, but only that he might have received it, and then only if the first edition had sold out.
I'm certain that in the end he would have received at least £40,000.
No, Mr. Parry, it was only a vague possibility. But the £20,000 he induced Miss Pickford and Sir Richard to part with, now that was a reality. There was something concrete.
I don't agree. He knew that he would make more money from the book.
It is, of course, in your interests, isn't it, that Mr. Beaumont should retain his liberty, otherwise you wouldn't get that book, would you?
Well, I want the book, certainly.
Does it matter enough to you to lie for him?
Who do you think I am? I have my feelings and integrity like other people, you know. I take publishing seriously. I'm not just in it for the money, you know.
Aren't you? Mr. Parry, your company, has it been in existence long?
2 years. I've had other publishing companies. It's just a change of title.
Yes, you previously owned Andrew Parry Publications, I believe.
Yes.
And this company went into voluntary liquidation in 1970.
Yes.
You're not a big publisher, are you, Mr. Parry?
Compared to some, we are. We're not one of the major publishing houses, if that's what you mean.
With a staff of only 4, no, you could hardly be classed as a major publisher. What sort of books do you handle, Mr. Parry? Fiction, travel?
Non-fiction, mostly.
Such as the Marquis de Sade's Forbidden World, Perversion Through the Ages, 69 Sex Games for You, and Memoirs of a Call Girl.
Well, they may not appeal to your taste, Mr. Lotherby, but it's what the public want these days.
And you most certainly provide it, don't you, Mr. Parry?
Well, if I don't, someone else would. There's nothing wrong with that, is there? Is there? I mean, there's a lot of money to be made out of... Well, I don't write the stuff, do I?
The case of the Queen against Beaumont will be resumed tomorrow in the Crown Court. In the trial of Nigel Beaumont for blackmail, the accused is now to give evidence on his own behalf. Sir Richard Jeffcote and Miss Stella Pickford have both stated that Beaumont demanded and obtained £10,000 from each of them under the threat of exposing details of their private lives in a book he intended writing. Under cross-examination, Andrew Parry, Beaumont's publisher, has now admitted that his small company has only been in existence for 2 years and that he mainly publishes books of a pornographic nature.
And by profession, you're a writer.
Yes.
When did you first consider writing this book?
In June 1967.
A long time in preparation. Was it your own idea, or did someone else suggest you write it?
Well, both, really. Initially, the idea came from the magazine that I was working for. They planned to do a series of articles on well-known people. Unfortunately, there was a legal case. The articles were abandoned, and shortly after that, the magazine folded up. I went through my research material and realized that it should be turned into a book.
I see. Now let's come to the all-important question. Why? Why did you decide to write this book?
Well, that's not a simple answer, I'm afraid.
Then take your time, Mr. Beaumont. It's essential that the court can understand what initially motivated you to write this book.
People of my age, we think differently from the older generation. We want to know the truth about things because we're prepared to accept the truth. If there's one thing my generation can't stand, it's hypocrisy. You see, today, well, for example, take a pop star. If he's living with someone, he'll admit it quite openly. He won't try to cover it up and say, we're just good friends. Well, that's sort of what we've been brought up with.
You mean your generation demands honesty?
Yes. And here I had the true stories of 6 people. Well, not the sugar-coated cant that's normally printed about them, but the real truth. You see, here were 6 people that my generation had been brought up to respect, to even emulate. And I felt I had to explode this sacred myth and show them for what they really were. Just ordinary people with ordinary failings like everyone else, you know?
So it was a desire for truth that prompted you to write the book?
Oh, well, that makes it sound a bit noble. No, I think quite simply that I saw the chance of making studies of 6 people in depth, and for once without somebody telling me what I could or could not say. I think that's it, really.
Now, when you started in 1967, was it necessary for you to gather more material?
Oh, yes. What I had at the time was sufficient for a magazine article, but not for a book. Most of my research had been on Sir Richard and Miss Pickford, and I wanted to cover the whole spectrum of so-called friendships throughout the 30s and 40s. I needed another 4 biographies, and that's what took the time.
In these early stages, did you consider the amount of money you might have made from the book?
No. Oh, I knew that if the book sold well, I'd make some money, but, well, to begin with, I didn't even know that I'd get it published.
Now, did it at any time enter your head to use the material you'd acquired for the purpose of blackmail?
No, never.
Was it your idea to visit Miss Pickford and Sir Richard?
No. Quite frankly, I didn't want them to know about the book at all. I'd already seen what had happened when Sir Richard got wind of the magazine article, and I thought the same thing might happen to Mr. Parry, and that the book would be suppressed.
Nevertheless, you did go.
Yes, Andrew convinced me that the sure way of preventing this from happening again was to show them the source of the material that I was going to use, so that they couldn't claim that it was libelous in any way.
Ah, now that was the reason you showed the photographs to them.
Yes. Well, most of them were photographs that had already appeared in the press, and neither of them raised any objection at the time.
I see. Now, I'd like to deal with the interview you had with Sir Richard, the first interview. After you'd shown him the photographs, what happened then?
And he got very angry, and he threatened me with libel actions and injunctions, that sort of thing.
And then?
Well, when he realized he wasn't getting anywhere, he began to plead with me. He said I'd be ruining his career, that Guy Paget had fought for his country, and that no one understood how beautiful the friendship between 2 men could be, and, well, you know.
But Mr. Beaumont, we do not know.
Oh, I'm sorry, my lord.
Please try to be more explicit. Go on.
Well, he just kept on pleading.
And what did you do?
Well, I got very embarrassed. I picked up my briefcase and I started to walk towards the door. Then Sir Richard asked me how much money I was going to make from the book. Well, I told him I didn't know. Then he wrote out a check and handed it to me. I asked him what it was for, and he said, in place of royalties, now you won't have to write the book.
And this was the cheque for £10,000?
Yes.
And did you accept it and agree not to write the book?
No, not immediately. I asked for time to think it over. I tried to hand Sir Richard back his cheque, but he wouldn't take it. He told me to keep it, said it would help me to make up my mind.
Now, when you first called on Miss Pickford, had you come to any conclusions about Sir Richard's proposition?
No, not really. I'd half decided not to accept the money, but at that stage I think it would be fair to say that my mind was not quite made up.
How did Miss Pickford receive the news of the book?
Well, unlike Sir Richard, Miss Pickford was quite calm.
She said I'd obviously gone to a lot of research, but that it should be put to better use, and that if I'd agree to drop this book, she'd commission me to write the official biography of J.B. Garford.
And what was your reaction?
Well, I told her that I wouldn't dream of writing the kind of heroic rubbish that she had in mind. Anyway, I could see that she was just trying to buy me.
So what happened then?
Well, by this time, she'd started to look through the book. She asked me if I'd seen Sir Richard yet. I said I had, and what had been the outcome of that interview.
Did you divulge this information freely?
Oh, no. No, she kept on pumping me. In the end, I told her, and that's when she agreed to pay me the same as Sir Richard had, if only I'd agree to forget all about publishing the book.
And did you agree?
Yes, I did. Well, it was a great deal of money. It's far more than I ever thought I'd get from the book. Miss Pickford said that I'd be a fool to turn down the chance of a lifetime, and I believed her. And then she started to type out the agreement.
Agreement? What agreement was this, Mr. Beaumont?
Well, the one I signed, my lord. Miss Pickford said it all had to be done legally.
Miss Tate?
I'm afraid it's the first I've heard of an agreement, my lord.
Have you a copy of this?
No, my lord. It was only a single sheet of paper, and Miss Pickford kept it.
What was written on this single sheet of paper?
That all rights in my book would pass to her on payment of £10,000.
Mr. Beaumont, there's something here I don't understand. Evidence of this nature would be the very cornerstone of your defense. Why haven't you mentioned it before?
My lord, I couldn't produce this agreement, and I knew only too well that Miss Pickford would deny even its existence. So, what was the point? It was just my word against hers.
I see. I think perhaps we'd better move on, Miss Tate.
As your lordship pleases. Mr. Beaumont, now this cheque you received from Miss Pickford, why was it post-dated until April the 5th?
Well, she said that it would be better if it came into the next tax year.
Better for whom?
Well, I took her to mean me, but she could have been referring to herself.
Well, were you aware that the cheque was cancelled immediately you left the house?
No.
Why did you go back to see Sir Richard?
To tell him that I'd decided to go ahead with the book after all, and to return his money.
And why did you make a second appointment to see Miss Pickford?
For the same reason.
What happened when you saw Sir Richard for the second time?
Well, I told him I intended going ahead with the book, and I offered him my cheque, but he wouldn't take it. He said he'd increase his offer another £5,000. I told him no, but he insisted that I keep it, said I should sleep on it, and we would meet again the following day.
And so you returned to the hotel with the cheque still in your pocket?
Yes. I tried to phone Andrew for advice, but he was out of town.
Now, when Inspector Woods arrived at the hotel room, he's quoted you as saying, "Oh dear, I've been half expecting you to turn up." Is this correct?
Yes.
Well, what prompted you to say that?
Well, I think it was mainly Sir Richard's attitude. He seemed very strange. All the time he was talking to me, he was so obviously thinking about something else. Several times I had to repeat what I'd just said. And then there was his refusal to accept my cheque, even to touch it. He told me to take it away and burn it. Well, the more I thought about it, the more I realized that he must be planning something. And when the police arrived, I knew I was right.
Now, one final but all-important question, Mr. Beaumont. Have you at any time used the threat of publishing your book as a means of demanding money from Miss Pickford, Sir Richard, or any other person?
No, never.
Thank you, Mr. Beaumont.
Nigel Beaumont.
Yes.
It's a very imposing name, isn't it? But of course you weren't christened that, were you?
No, I changed my name by official deed poll.
Rather different from the name you were born with, Norman Higley. You didn't find that impressive enough, I suppose.
I just didn't want to go on bearing my father's name, that's all.
Your father, yes, he was a vicar in Surrey, I believe.
Yes.
An unfrocked vicar.
My lord, is this necessary?
Yes, Miss Tate. Mr. Lotterby.
My lord, if I may continue for a few moments.
Very well.
Thank you, my lord. Now, Mr. Beaumont, why was your father unfrocked?
I believe it was for for indecency.
Was it a homosexual offense? Well?
Yes.
And because of this, you hated him so much, you changed your name. And am I not right in saying that you feel the same hatred towards any man you even suspect of being homosexual?
No, that is not true.
Mr. Lotterby, as I suspected, in spite of your assurances to me, all those questions are wholly irrelevant. Unless you are trying to show that the accused's motive was hatred, not money. And I assume that you are not trying to show that.
I'm merely suggesting, my lord, that perhaps there was an underlying motive of hatred which was almost subconscious. However, I will not continue with this line of questioning if you so wish.
I do, Mr. Lotterby.
Now, Mr. Beaumont, in your book, was there not going to be a chapter entitled The Unnatural Friendship?
When two men live together, as they did, in my opinion, it is unnatural.
In your opinion? I suppose, Mr. Beaumont, you were too young to have been in the army.
Yes, my lord.
Then would you accept from me that there can be deep, long-lasting friendships forged in war that last a lifetime? Male, non-physical friendships?
Yes, my lord, but two men don't have to live together just because they're good friends. If they do, there's usually a deeper relationship.
Really? I see. Well, sometime I should like to hear what you have to say about the Chelsea pensioners, but perhaps not now. I think we should move on, Mr. Lotterby.
Thank you, my lord. Now, Mr. Beaumont, you say you've been researching this book for 6 years.
Yes.
Well, that's a long time. How have you earned a living?
I've taken jobs.
Full-time jobs?
Yes.
So the book then was just a spare-time occupation?
Oh, no, I wouldn't say that. The book was of prime importance. The jobs were necessary so that I could carry on with it.
But as you were working full-time, this could only be done in your spare time, couldn't it?
Yes, but your implication was that it was just a hobby.
Your words, Mr. Beaumont, not mine. Now, you explained to my learned friend your reasons for writing this book, how you couldn't stand hypocrisy or cant, how your book was to be a study of 6 people in depth, a fine intellectual aspiration. So why did you choose to do business with Mr. Parry, a publisher of pornography?
At the time, I didn't know what sort of books he published.
Really? And wasn't it that you knew your book fell into the same category?
No, it was quite simply that he was the first publisher that I was in touch with.
You went to see him then with the manuscript?
Yes, he said he'd read my old magazine articles, that he'd heard I was doing some research to follow them up, that he was interested to look at it and see if he might include it in his list.
And did you show him the material you had collected?
Yes, he was very interested.
In fact, he thought it would be a bestseller.
Yes.
Once it was actually written.
Well, naturally.
And you then went to see Sir Richard and Miss Pickford?
Yeah, on Mr. Parry's advice.
Now, having worked on your study in depth for 6 years, having got Mr. Parry all excited at the thought of a bestseller, you went to see these 2 people. They offered you money, you said. And you're saying that you immediately forgot the book, forgot more poor Mr. Parry, your publisher. Now, wouldn't you say that was the height of hypocrisy?
The decision was not immediate. I have already said that.
Have you? Oh, yes. Yes, I do apologize. You tell my learned friend that after seeing Sir Richard, but before seeing Miss Pickford, you'd half decided not to accept the money, but that your mind wasn't quite made up.
That's right.
Why then did you go straight to a bank in Fulchester and pay Sir Richard's cheque into your account?
Well, because I might have lost it.
But was it necessary for you to ask for a special clearance on it?
I just wanted to see if it was genuine, that's all.
But if you'd half decided not to accept the money, it wouldn't have mattered, would it? I suggest that having extorted money from Sir Richard, you wanted to get that cheque cleared as fast as possible in case he changed his mind.
No.
Do you honestly ask this court to believe that if Sir Richard had paid you this £10,000 willingly, he would have let you walk out of his house without getting you to sign some form of receipt?
That's what happened.
No. No, the only reason he'd do that would be if it were the sort of transaction that couldn't be recorded. A payment to a blackmailer.
It was not like that at all. He offered the money.
And in the same way Miss Pickford offered you exactly the same amount?
Yes.
You're asking us to believe that 2 people should behave in an entirely identical manner and say, oh, please, Mr. Beaumont, don't write your book. Have a cheque for £10,000 instead.
That is not what happened. Miss Pickford gave me £10,000 because Sir Richard had.
You just happened to let that figure slip into the conversation,
Look,
I
I
suppose.
have already told you. She kept on questioning me.
But why did you see Miss Pickford anyway? I mean, if you were not going to write Sir Richard's story, there'd be no book. Hence, no need to see Miss Pickford.
At the time, I thought I was going ahead with the book.
Having just asked for a special clearance on Sir Richard's cheque. Which brings me to this other cheque, the one the police found on you, the one made out to Sir Richard. Was it genuine?
Yes, of course.
I mean, if it had been cashed, would it have been met?
Yes?
Are you sure?
Yes.
Well, I beg to differ, Mr. Beaumont. At the time of your arrest, your account was only in credit to the amount of £8,977.
Oh, yes, that's quite true. I had been overdrawn, but I'm quite sure that my bank would have met the cheque.
You think so? Well, previous to your receiving Sir Robert's cheque, your bank manager had been writing to you regularly for 3 months, insisting that your overdraft of £1,000 should be reduced. Well, hadn't he?
Yes, but I'm quite sure that everyone gets letters like that from time to time.
Am I not right in saying that the last letter you received from your bank was on the very morning you saw Sir Richard?
No, I left home before the post arrived that day. I didn't find it until I got back.
When was your book to have been published?
In the summer.
Then you wouldn't have received any royalties from that book until some time later. Now, would your bank have waited that long for a reduction in your overdraft?
Look, I am quite sure that my bank manager would have given me an extended overdraft on the strength of the royalties expected from the sales of my book. Now, my overdraft has absolutely nothing to do with all this.
Oh, but I think it has. I put it to you, Mr. Beaumont, that finding yourself in a difficult financial position, realizing that Sir Richard didn't want this book published, you saw a means of raising money quickly. And so you demanded and received £10,000 as the price of your silence.
No, that is not
true.
true.
Having found that this worked once, you used the same intimidation on Miss Pickford.
Look, they
and then
offered
with
the money.
£20,000 in your pocket, you became greedy and you went back for another bite of the golden apple.
No, that is an absolute lie.
Did you call on any of the other people you intended writing about in your book?
The others, no.
Why not?
Well, Mr. Parry didn't think it was necessary at that stage.
Or could it be that as 2 of them were dead, one of them was bankrupt and the other was out of the country, you had no chance of extorting money from them?
No, that is not the reason at all.
You gave your occupation to my learned friend as a writer.
Yes?
Now, how many books have you written?
Well, this is my first one.
Have you actually written it, then?
Well, no, not yet.
So, in fact, you haven't ever written a single book, have you? My lord, members of the jury, just good friends. The mere title of Nigel Beaumont's proposed book is cheap innuendo. I hesitate to think what its contents would be like or for what readership it was intended. Perversion through the ages, memoirs of a call girl, and the latest on this publisher's list was to have been Just Good Friends. Well, you might think as I do, the very idea of this book despicable, attempting to smear people's lives in this way. But Nigel Beaumont is charged with something even more mean and underhand, blackmail. And the very word leaves a foul taste in the mouth. And there is no doubt that that is what Mr. Beaumont was engaged in. Now, Nigel Beaumont is a writer who has not written one book. Well, he didn't have to. This writer merely had to threaten to write. And for the price of his silence, he demanded £10,000 from Sir Richard Jeffcott and £10,000 from Stella Pickford. Now, the evidence that he did, in fact, receive this money is not in dispute. And having received Sir Richard's cheque, note how quickly he paid it into his bank, insisting on a special clearance. Well, he needed it to pay his £1,000 overdraft. Miss Pickford said she believed his mind is diseased, and we've heard enough of his opinions, I think, to understand something of what she meant. Certainly his actions seem to be the product of a sick mind, but then such could be said of any blackmailer. Ladies and gentlemen, you have no alternative but to find Nigel Beaumont guilty as charged.
Miss Tate?
Members of the jury, I shall not try to blind you with emotion or rhetoric, but simply lay before you a few salient facts. Now, let the first thing be settled. Nigel Beaumont was writing a book. It is there in evidence before you. We have seen how Mr. Beaumont has collected and correlated only known facts, many of which had been printed publicly before. The clear, unvarnished truth about these relationships. Well, sometimes the truth can be unpalatable. so unpalatable that people will go to any lengths to have it hushed up. Why was it, members of the jury, that at no time did either Sir Richard or Miss Pickford try to bring an injunction to stop publication? For a multimillionairess and a senior member of Parliament, this should not have been too difficult a task. The reason is that the book was not libelous and the action would have failed. Now, why did neither of them go to the police rather than offering money? Because they were not being blackmailed. Nigel Beaumont worked for 6 years researching the lives of 6 people for this book. Now, why bother to do all this if his intention was blackmail? We've already seen that he had enough material for blackmail from the original magazine article. Nigel Beaumont is an honest man who detests the hypocrisy and cant which society surrounds its leading figures with. He detests the conspiracy of silence with which the establishment protects its own. Determined to expose this conspiracy to the light of day, he went to see these people. Determined to ignore the powers of their money and their influence, he refused their offers to hush up his work. As a result, he finds himself accused of blackmail. Members of the jury, I ask you to find him not guilty.
Now, members of the jury, you've now had an opportunity to hear the evidence both for the prosecution and for the defence. And very shortly I shall be asking you to retire to consider your verdict. I feel that you should know and understand exactly what is meant by the word blackmail. It is the crime of obtaining money or other property with menaces. Thus, if A were to say to B, "You must pay me £100, that in itself could not be construed as blackmail. But if A were to say to B, "Unless you pay me £100, I shall tell your employer that you've been to prison," or some other such threat, that is blackmail. Now, I want you to be quite clear about this, because quite simply you have to decide whether or not the accused obtained money by means of a threat. Now, you should also be aware that the burden of proof falls upon the prosecution to establish its case beyond all reasonable doubt. And now, you've heard a very great deal concerning the private lives of 2 of the witnesses, and you may feel that you are somehow being asked to sit in judgment on them. This is not the case. Neither of them are on trial. You've heard their evidence, and it is for you to decide whether they gave the money voluntarily or under duress. It is not for you to decide whether the allegations into their private lives are true or not. Now, members of the jury, will you kindly retire to consider your verdict?
All stand. Members of the jury, will your foreman please stand? Answer this question, yes or no. Have you reached a verdict on which you're all agreed?
Yes.
Do you find the prisoner guilty or not guilty of blackmail?
Not guilty. Thank you.
Mr. Beaumont, you are free to go.
All stand.
Next week, our cameras return to watch another leading case in the Crown Court.